Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about a new range from QNAP. Now I say new, it's kind of a bit new and a bit old, it's somewhere in the middle. Today I want to talk about the TVS-672X and the TVS-872X. Now for those that aren't aware, these are kind of a reiteration and a slight change on an existing series known as the 72XT series that's been around for a little over 2 years now. It was originally the XT series, their 10Gbe and Thunderbolt enabled device. It provided a huge amount of performance, a huge amount of storage capability, and a huge amount of external connectivity, taking advantage of the likes of traditional 1Gbe network connectivity, 10Gbe network connectivity, and Thunderbolt. Now that was again about 2 years ago, and it brought a number of unique features that not only applied to business, but it was heavily recommended, not just on this platform, for a number of different variations of utility, of data access, and it won numerous top 3s and top 5s in my rankings over the last few years with regards to Plex Media Server, virtualization, surveillance, content creation, and more. Now, when that's been over the last 2 years, since then, that system also arrived in one other form, the N series, and that was a 5Gbe equivalent of that exact same system, but they removed 10Gbe and they removed the Thunderbolt connectivity. It lowered the price and it allowed it to be available in a 6 and 8 bay device without the Thunderbolt tax, if you will. Now, the 5Gbe model wasn't the most popular, let's be honest. I liked it, but I liked it for the internal hardware. As far as external connectivity was, 5Gbe, we talk about 2.5Gbe quite a lot, but when the 5Gbe model came out more than a year ago, I think about 14 months ago, the market just, let's face it, all of us were like, well, who the hell's got 5Gbe? What the hell is this? And of course, things have moved forward a great deal since then. So 2 years since the original release, we can now talk, finally, about the 72X series. This is the 10Gbe but not Thunderbolt version of that device. It is nearly identical to the Thunderbolt device, although with some very, very small but incredibly important differences in this latest version that need to be touched on. But straight away, as many times as I might call these new releases, it has to be said that all of the good things I'm going to talk about in this video still doesn't detract from the fact that the 72XT series is still one of the best things that QNAP have put out in the last couple of years. And this is a slightly revised version of that. So if you already own the 72XT, or you were considering the 72XT and it was already in your budget or already spec'd up for your needs, this device is just not for you, okay? Because that device had everything inside. This is for people that are coming at this fresh. But this long introduction aside, let's talk about those specifications. So, what does the 72X bring to the table? Well, straight away, that X, it is a 10Gbe enabled device. It's got a single port there, but it allows up to 1000 megs per second external connectivity without that Thunderbolt extra purchase. The other big difference between this and the versions that came before it is the 72X series arrives with the option of either ext4 or ZFS as the file system of choice by default. It includes QUTS Hero, the ZFS software and graphical user interface and services of QNAP's own platforms. That includes the ability to remove the volume layer, and therefore all the data and handling that you're doing with the device is on the storage pool tier, which means RAID building, RAID reserving is stupidly fast by comparison, taking minutes, not hours. On top of that, you've got the advantage of data compression and data deduplication with numerous statistical advantages internally to really see the benefits of ZFS in file throughput internally and how that bestows externally. On top of that, you do have far more intelligent inline compression as well, and of course with everything happening with caching being considerably better in ZFS than you find traditionally on ext4, the result is that all of the recent improvements, I say recent in the last year and a half, that QNAP have made to their software and their hardware offerings are considerably more improved on this system. The fact that you can't get the 72XT Thunderbolt series with ZFS right now is one of the main distinctions between these two devices. Now, both the 6 bay and the 8 bay variants arrive with that 8th gen i3 quad-core processor, the i3-8100T. That is a quad-core 3.1 gigahertz x86 processor there, Intel Core. It has embedded graphics at UHD 630. So again, 4K 1080p, going to run like a dream. It's also got, because it's got that embedded graphics, you are talking about all of the visually demanding processes on a NAS. And again, you can go light like Plex Media Server. I'm talking more about virtual machines. I'm talking about surveillance of multiple cameras at once and those live feeds. All of that heavy file access that visual data bestows on a system and really taxes it will be a lot easier on this system, just like it was before, but with the added benefits of ZFS. And it's worth highlighting that that CPU and this system arrives with 8 gig of memory by default, a single stick that can be upgraded with SODIMM modules over 2 slots up to a maximum 64 gig. Now, this is very important because this system, although it arrives with QUTS Hero, the ZFS version of QNAP's operating system and software, 8 gig of memory by default is not going to run all of those services. So bear in mind that the 8 gig module does remove some elements of things like inline deduplication, and there's a few other bits and bobs as well. So if you want to take advantage of the full benefits of ZFS, you will have to upgrade a little bit further there. Now, this system doesn't have ECC memory, but it can utilize ECC memory, which is always good to hear. But on top of that, in terms of external design, it is near enough identical to the 72XT. It's just that lack of Thunderbolt connectivity. Even in 2021, the hardware specifications externally on this device still hold up pretty well, with only a couple of small niggling doubts. Straight away, we can see that this device still features HDMI 2.0, so 4K 60 frames per second output for HD station and visual interfaces, whether it's for multimedia, virtual machine utilization, or surveillance. On top of that, the system does have that 10Gbe port, but is slightly let down by the idea it only has 1 gigabit Ethernet there. Now, one could argue QNAP could have bumped those up to a 2.5 GBE connection instead, but then we don't know just how much of this CPU's lanes are being utilized by this whole infrastructure as it is. Nevertheless, you've still got 1 GBE there for your local low-level access, maybe internet connectivity, and that 10 GBE for a wider, faster network connection. Now, in terms of storage, as mentioned, there are a 6 and an 8 bay device, both of which are utilizing SATA hard drives. So again, it's up to 18 or 20 TB drives from the likes of WD Red and Seagate Ironwolf. But on top of that, the system also has 2 internal NVMe SSD bays inside. Each of those NVMe M2 SSD bays is Gen 3 x 2 in architecture. That means each one has a potential 2000 megabytes per second throughput to the board inside. Now, the NVMe's you put inside there can be utilized for caching, which once again in ZFS, or use them for raw storage. Have raw storage pools on those to be enjoyed by multimedia, to be utilized for offsetting and editing files directly over 10 GBE on this device, and more. So you can use one for caching and one for raw storage, or use both. Ultimately, it's a great level of access, even now in 2021, that holds up very, very well. In terms of access and upgradability, it's also worth touching on that this system has 2 PCIe upgrade slots, with one PCIe lane at 3x4, so again up to 4000 megabytes per second throughput, and a second slot at an impressive PCIe Gen 3x16 slot, utilized largely for the likes of graphics cards and high performance cards to be installed inside. So again, there's lots of ways in which the upgradability of the 72XT series and now the 72X series still holds up fantastically well, even now in 2021. Now, I'm still waiting on full confirmation on pricing on this device and how well it compares with the Thunderbolt variant of this device. But the main difference between this and the 2-year-old XT series is going to come down to 2 main factors there. First and foremost, it's going to come down to the inclusion of QTS, which is going to be that's probably going to affect the price. And the other price difference is going to be the removal of Thunderbolt. So again, looking at the 6 and the 8 bay X versus XT series is something we're going to look at later on and precisely find out just what that price difference will be and whether it is worth that inclusion towards the larger But this has been a brief overview of the brand new 72X series in 6 and 8 bay coming very, very soon in 2021. If you want to learn more about this device and more about NAS, click subscribe. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, click like. It really does help. But otherwise, visit the links in the description to learn more about this NAS and others. And otherwise, I will see you on the next video.